Hi, everyone, and welcome to DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to join us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Also send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests questions on Twitter using hashtag DisrupTV. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong, CEO, founder of Constellation Research, best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business. Ray doesn't like it when I hold the book up, but I love the book. He's also a contributor to Forbes, Harvard Business Review, ZDNet, and other publications. He's a keynote speaker and one of the best follows on Twitter at RWAMG0. Welcome, Ray, to episode 60 of Disrupt TV.
Episode 60. Hey, everybody. And thanks to my co-host, Vala Afshar, as you mentioned, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, but more importantly, one of the top CIO, CMO influencers in the world, contributor Huffington Post, and also an author himself. I will be finding his book next week. But hey, more importantly, we have an awesome guest today. Who do we have? One of the top thinkers.
We are one of the top CIOs in the country. We're delighted to have Nicole Raimundo, CIO of Town of Cary, on our show. Cary is a thriving community in the heart of the Triangle area of North Carolina, between Raleigh and the renowned Research Triangle. It's repeatedly ranked as amongst the top regions in the country to live and work. Nicole was recently awarded the North Carolina Technology Association's 2016 Public Sector CIO of the Year Award. Congratulations. She's a passionate technology leader in both private and public sector experience. Nicole promotes the value of partnerships and innovative thinking in government while continuously pursuing new models of civic innovation for collaborative citizen-facing projects. Before coming to Town of Cary, Nicole serves as the Chief Operating Officer for City of Raleigh, where she was responsible for the creation and direction of the award-winning Open Data Program for City of Raleigh. You can follow Nicole on Twitter at NRAIMUNDO. Welcome, Nicole, to Disrupt TV.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, congratulations on your award for
Thank
2016. I think for a lot of folks, right, when we think about public sector, we think about the challenges, right? Constrained budgets, limited opportunities, lots of decisions, conversations, stakeholders, constituents to work about. So how do you break down silos and help organizations take a strategic point of view? Because it's hard, especially in public sector.
So, okay, let's face it, it's a journey, right? Breaking down silos is an ongoing journey. For me here in the Town of Cary, it was, it's been a little easier than previous. I think listening to a lot, going out, meeting with each of the department directors, listening to what they're saying, trying to build that trust is really important. For them, I think breaking them out of thinking about just their business and starting to think about the overall organization and thinking about how sharing information can benefit everyone and as well as their own department. So for us, it was a lot about, in terms of technology, moving away from a gazillion small applications and starting to move more towards platforms where it's easiest for us to share across.
Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, you recently talked about, investing in mobile technologies, cloud systems, and more of a platform approach. So instead of looking at singular applications for a particular department, creating a platform so you can co-create value and collaborate across the entire town. Can you talk to us a little bit about that vision that you're bringing to Cary?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really, let's face it, it's really not a sustainable model for us as a department to support lots of redundant applications and just lots of single applications, right? So moving more towards this platform for us gives us one source of the truth. It lets us look at a 360 view of our citizens, of our vendors, and it helps us look at how we can better serve our community, and it allows for us to have better metrics. It is absolutely 100% the way for us to go. I personally am I have a passion and a mission for this because I think it's something that all governments our municipalities should do. I think a lot of times we get stuck in this, well, this product is just for government, so we have to buy it, when in fact it's not. So I think to a platform approach is something that all governments really should look at.
Wow. So actually, you raise a very, very good point, right? You are moving to a data-driven approach, right? And some of this is happening with your open data initiatives. Talk about how people are using data, especially in some of those open data initiatives that you have in place. What are you doing to change the way behaviors occur, or how people access that data to do something different, or actually build up on top of that in terms of data-driven kind of activities?
Sure. So we started. As Vala mentioned, I worked on open data previously in Raleigh, and it was fantastic, and I really learned a lot about it. And one of the things that I learned was we were putting out data, and it was really meant for citizen, hacktivist developers. It's in its raw form. And when I came to Cary, I really thought about how do we make data really accessible and meaningful to our everyday citizens. And that's when we really decided to use it in telling stories so that people could understand how to use the data and really see the meaning behind it. I always give the example of, in Raleigh, we put out our fire data, and you could see anomalies, but you had no idea, right? So maybe that year there was a drought, so there were a lot of fires going on. So I really thought it was important to talk about the stories behind it and connect. Now in Cary, we have a strong Code for America brigade, and they actually co-built a lot of it with us. And we had lots of conversations with them too, explaining to them, okay, I understand how you think, but let's think about how the everyday citizen is. And so we put out lots of visualizations with data and allowed them to really look at it and look at things that were meaningful, whether it was, health inspection data on restaurants, which everyone should look at before they go out to eat, or whether it was something simple as our neighborhoods were all built at different times put together. So as everyone's changing out their HVAC systems, right, in the summer, so you can now see who's doing that, who was the vendor on it, and it makes for better citizen engagement for them to talk to each other. So I think it's been a great success for us. We actually allow citizens to input their own stories if they have it. And we share the data, encourage sharing of the data with our local technology, our technical college. They have a program on business analytics. And so last Friday, they were doing some capstone projects, and I got to see a presentation on where Cary should put their next fire station based on a whole bunch of open data. So it's kind of cool.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you are in the RTP, cool. Research Triangle Park, so it's one of the country's top hubs. You just gave an example of working with students at a local college university. Are you able to take advantage of, this technological hub that surrounds Cary?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, we are so blessed, right? So we get to take advantage of it, and it's great. So for us, it's a short drive, so we can go over to Cisco, see what's going on over there, go to Lenovo's Innovation Lab. Actually, next week, there's a whole group of us going up to IBM, and they're helping us with a workshop on leading innovation in organizations. Wow. The unique thing about Cary versus Raleigh is we're on a campus as opposed to being spread out through the city. And the benefit of us having a campus is we can test technologies on the campus before we deploy it to the field. So we are in the midst of building out a smart campus. So we essentially have everything that you need to create a smart city within our campus. And so we've partnered with SAS and Census and Salesforce. So we've got strong partnerships. So it's public-private. So we're not spending citizens' dollars, which is good, to test out technologies. So next week we're having parking sensors put in one of the lots, and that'll be a good start for us to kind of test out that technology and prove it before we deploy it at a larger scale throughout the town.
That is really, really, really cool. Now, there's a plus side and a minus side of having, to work in a very educated populace, because, sometimes it makes it easier and sometimes it makes it harder to make changes. How's it work for you? Because like lots of folks are probably like, well, I'm an expert in X, Y, and Z. How come you don't do it this way? And we get this a lot in the Valley. Like we always make fun. We have a panel every year at our Constellation conference where it's like how to be a Silicon Valley CXO and survive. So
yeah, so that is interesting. We definitely get feedback when things don't seem to be the way other people want them, right? We can't fool them. We do have an advisory board, a technology advisory board made up of citizens that meets once a month. So we do sit with them, listen to them, and they provide their feedback, and they'll share things that they would like to see us working on. So I think we have a good communication stream, but I think for us, there is always that challenge of the expectations are high. We live in a town where, everyone's using technology just like everyone else in their everyday life. So the expectation is when they come to town hall or look at apps or anything we do, it should work the same exact way.
I love the transparency and the fact that you're a big proponent of open data. And Ray and I always said, a story can change the world, a good story. Tell us a little bit about the art of using data and analytics to tell a story where the citizens almost feel like, and perhaps they are, helping you and your team co-create value and improve the overall community experience at Cary.
Yeah, so I think by opening it up, the first step for us really is sharing it and opening up the possibilities for people to contribute their own stories. And going through, we do a lot of co-creation, like I said, with our local brigade. Interestingly, last year we had 10 high school students that were interns. So the local high school has a program that's an information technology track, where they learn SaaS analytics through that, and we had them on site, and they worked a lot on the open data portal. And it was interesting to get their perspective and interest in government, where I think that experience really helped them. So I think for us, it's all about sharing it, listening, like the presentation the other night where the woman got up and showed us where to put our new fire station, right? So I invited her in and come meet with the fire department. We want to hear that stuff.
That's amazing.
Oh, it's really cool. I was on the site and I was sitting here like, the way the storytelling works, right? Here's where the homes are being built, right? Here's all the permits and things. Yeah. Here's all the green space that's happening, right? Here's all the things, people want in parks and recreation. It's pretty wild, right? And usually, like when you walk into a planning meeting or you walk in as a citizen, you don't have all this data. Most people, like in the neighborhoods I live in, these two incomes that are working, so you get two income working families. Nobody's got time to look up this stuff, and suddenly all this information's in front of you. You show up to a meeting, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I would have known that, and it's pretty powerful what you have there in terms of that data. And hey, tied back to the smart cities that are going on with the smart campus that you talked about. What are you pioneering around how data gets collected, how the sensors are in place, how these, is this kind of a beginning of where you guys want to head to in terms of smart cities overall?
Yeah, so it's definitely the beginning of where we want to head. And I'm going to be honest, it's been about a year-long journey working with the various partners. And quite interestingly, nobody's got to figure it out. And everybody's looking for whatever that stack is going to look like, and there's really no standards. So we've found it's been interesting. We've talked to different partners, whether it's Duke Energy or even Cisco. And a year ago, everyone was like, "Yeah, we're all in," and then we're like, "Okay, let's go." And they're like, "Well, wait, we're not really ready yet." So there's been lots of stops and starts as we figured out, but it's great because we're kind of figuring it out together and being able to deploy it and then swap things in and out. So our vision is to test everything out on campus before we figure out whether to deploy it. So whether it's the parking meters or whether it's some sustainability stuff around our building energy efficiencies or wayfinding, whatever, lighting, actually have 2 swap spots. So if you were to sell something on Craigslist, we have 2 swap spots in front of the police department. So we want to be able to control the lighting on that and cameras and analytics and visuals. So we've got lots of opportunities and around campus, whether it's even simple stuff like tell me when to, fill up the trash, when to empty the recycling. So I think we've got a good model. The cool thing is, because we are so close to RTP, is part of the benefit of having the public-private partnership is, if you're at SAS or Cisco, you can come and show your clients an actual real working model, not a simulation in their lab. They get to really bring them down, and it's an actual model for them. So it's a win-win the way I see it.
That's all.
It's really cool because the swap spots, right? For folks who don't know, I mean, if you're trying to sell an internet-based transaction, scalp a ticket, just kidding. The fun thing is, like, you've got a safe spot. It's lit. It's a place you can do it any time of the day, and it's a really cool concept as you bridge digital transactions and public safety. Which a lot of times it's like, hey, I don't know what I bought, right? So that is a very, very cool concept. So.
Nicole, where do you research? So clearly you work with universities, you work with the RTP technology partners, but where else do you go to develop your investment thesis for IT? 12 to 24 months. Is it conferences, social media, peer CIOs? Give us some advice in terms of how you develop your vision.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything, right? It's a combination of conferences, it's networking and again, I can't reiterate enough how blessed we are to be in the location we are, because there's lots of events and networking events for us to attend. I think being in a government and municipal especially, it's really, really critical to go out and network, especially with private industry, to see what they're doing, because it's really applicable to what we do. There's lots of events going on. I think also attending conferences that aren't, again, specific to municipal government are really important, because that's most of, or a lot of the forward thinking is really driven by industry, and that's where we need to be. And that's how we need to get ahead and get faster, is to leverage those partnerships and what other people are doing.
Wow. Well, hey, we'll keep you in mind as we put together our list of people for Constellation Connected Enterprise. We're always looking for great insights and speakers as part of that. Hey, I got a question for you, though. You're in Raleigh, big city, like 4 times as big as Cary. Cary's a little bit smaller. What changes when you're working in a smaller city versus in a larger city? We've had other great CIOs, like from the municipalities, Jonathan Reichenthal from City of Palo Alto, and Miguel Gamino when he was at San Francisco. And they share that there's difference in scale, but there's also difference in what's happening, when you work in larger or smaller cities. So kind of curious into your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna correct you a little bit. I think we're about 2.5.
All right.
Smaller. We're about 160,000, but like the second biggest town. But it is a little different. Raleigh's got different challenges, right? I mean, it's got different challenges just in diversity and crime, although, Raleigh's very safe, Cary is extremely safe. I think some of it really is the same differences you would see in working in a larger organization to a smaller organization, right? When you're in that smaller organization, it's easier to be a little bit more nimble. Things don't take quite as long because of the process. It's a lot easier to get things through. Organizationally, structured-wise, Raleigh and Cary are structured differently. End of the day, we still have the same problems, or same challenges, I should say. Maybe I should say opportunities. Maybe they're opportunities, I guess, right?
I'm trying to crowdsource a pothole. Help me. I was kidding.
Yeah. Hey, we're working on all that. I will say this area I found it unique that we have great relationships with our neighboring communities. So we partner with Raleigh a lot, and also with the counties. So we meet all the time, share resource ideas. We're sharing data back and forth because we really see it as a region. And, I like to share, we all talk about smart cities and, the ability, especially in terms of saving lives when you can control the lights, right? The street lights.
Yep.
Well, you want to be able to do that all the way from one town to another. A car's not going to stop right at the Cary town limits going into Raleigh. So it's really important for efforts like that for us to work on a regional basis in order for them really to have the impact that I think they can have.
This is very great. We've been talking to Nicole Raimundo, CIO at the town of Cary. You can follow at NRAIMUNDO, and more importantly, catch her on the replay of DisrupTV, and more importantly, follow her blog, and what's happening in Cary for some of the innovative things that are happening in municipalities. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. We've had some great municipal CIOs and public sector CIOs on our show, Vala. So we've seen some very, very, very cool things.
We really do. Extraordinary CIO. Definitely a rising star, no question. So again, fantastic insights from someone who's going through digital transformation at Cary. And now our next guest, Jeetu Patel, is Senior Vice President of Platform and Chief Strategy Officer at Box. In his role, he leads Box's platform business, driving the strategy for Box platform business and developer relations. He also oversees Box's corporate strategy and development organization. Jeetu has more than 20 years of experience in enterprise information technology, and before joining Box, he was a general manager and chief executive of EMC's Simplicity Business Unit. He previously held leadership roles at EMC's Information Intelligence Group, including chief marketing officer, chief strategy officer, and CTO. You can follow Jeetu on Twitter at jpatel, P-A-T-E-L 41. 41 may be the number on his race car because he dreams of being a NASCAR driver at some point. Welcome, Jeetu, to DisrupTV.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey,
Actually, do you know
Jeetu, welcome. And more importantly, is his work at HackerRank. That's the cool stuff that's going on in the background. So, but hey, what's it like to be the top tech person in a tech company? I'm not saying Aaron's not the top tech person, but is it easy? Is it hard? We're just talking about what happens, on the CIO side, being, CIO of a very, very highly educated, sophisticated town like Cary, where there are lots of folks that know a lot of stuff. I mean, how's it like being the person that's in charge of tech and platforms and what's happening in a company where, you're a tech company? So
yeah, I've been here at Box for about 2 years now, and we are going through it's a pretty interesting kind of phase that we're in, because you've got the best of both worlds, where we are now at about 71,000 customers, 63% of the Fortune 500, and so you've got a lot of scale, 50 million users. Then on the other side, we still operate like a startup, and we're very nimble, and there's a huge amount of innovation that's going on. We've kind of ridden the wave around some major megatrends that have acted as kind of tailwinds for us with the cloud and mobile and all of those. So I'd say is it hard? There's no business that's easy, so it's always hard. But I think the quality of the problem that you're solving is directly proportionate to the kind of talented people that you can have attracted to the problem. So from that perspective, the reason it's fun is because it's a hard problem we're solving, which is how do organizations go out and manage their content and change their culture around, how they operate based on what they're doing with information and how they actually respond to that information. So it's been a blast so far. It's a great company.
That's awesome. I saw you give a really compelling keynote, and you shared some stunning stats. You talked about 52% of companies on the Fortune 500 since 2000 are no longer there. You talked about, you projected going 10 years to 2027, and you said 75% of S&P 500 companies that are on the list will no longer be on the list. And you made bold statements that disruption is happening in every industry, doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter the industry. Yeah. And leading companies, you said, are reimagining how they develop and design for customer experience and customer engagement. You said every company is going to be a digital company. And you also mentioned old companies like GE that are leading transformation and best practices, as well as digital native companies that were born in the cloud, that were born mobile, born social. Tell us about what are these drivers that are transforming, companies, and And as you said, 63% of Fortune 100 trust Box to help them with transformation. So how are you guys doing it, and what are the drivers for this unprecedented level of change?
Yeah, and it's actually, by the way, congratulations. You're a very active listener, because that's a lot of things to remember from a keynote. So that's great. So it is actually fascinating to see that if you think about half-life of companies and business models, they're shrinking to about 7 or 8 years. So every 7 or 8 years, most companies will actually have a completely different way that their business model get architected compared to the way there was. And so it's almost a given that the next 10 years of your business will look very different from the past 50, right? And most of those businesses will either be, most of the businesses are either going to be disrupted themselves, or they will be on an offensive trying to disrupt someone else. And those are the only two kind of outcomes that you'll have. Is not going to be a steady status quo where this business model that we have is going to be the same over the course of the next kind of 50 years. What's interesting for us when we're in this is the space that we call cloud content management, where how do you go out and really help organizations work more effectively with information and content in a way that fundamentally changes culture, right? Like, do you go out and, we always kind of talk about this internally. You tell me what your IT stack is, and I'll tell you what your culture is. Because it's a direct proportion to that. Like, if you tell me that you're using a modern stack that's cloud-based, that's mobile, that you've given your users a lot of kind of freedom to use kind of modern technologies, chances are you're probably more transparent in the way that you work. Chances are that you're able to attract top talent within your organization. Chances are that they're happy and they're fulfilled in the way that they're doing things. Chances are the best ideas work rather than a hierarchy dictating what's going on. So those are all things that tend to be, kind of pretty kind of tied together. So if I were to think of what we see happening, is there is a difference between, like you mentioned GE, there's a difference between companies like GE, Nike, Starbucks, those companies on one end. And if you look at other companies, on the other side, who might not be as effective even though they've been around for a long time. You look at True Value, or you look at Sears or something of that sort. Like you're starting to see that they're starting to face much more acute pressure than folks like GE and Nike, and it's because what the folks that are doing well have done is they haven't just thought about going digital in a very simplistic way, which is the first phase was, let's just build an app. Let's keep our business the same. We'll build an app and we'll be digital. It's going to be great. And what we're finding is it's not just about building an app. You have to fundamentally change the ethos of your company and your operating model and your business model, in addition to your customer experience. And once you get all those three things together, there's a step function improvement that you have in the way that you move forward. So, the way that I would typically tell companies, to typically kind of advise companies on this front is, don't think about going digital as just a single dimensional thing. You have to make sure that you have a fundamentally revised operating model, which is much more transparent, much less hierarchical, much more focused on best idea winning, all of those pieces. Having the right kind of systems and technologies in place to enable people. Also focus on your business model, because chances are the source of your primary revenue stream today might get commoditized tomorrow, and you might need to have a different revenue stream tomorrow than the one that you have today. And that needs to be thought through in a way where, the classic definition of disruption is when someone's disrupting you, you don't see it coming until it's too late. But a great offensive player in disruption is one who creates disruption in such a way that the people that are getting disrupted don't have an incentive to respond to you. Right? And so if you look at what Netflix did against Blockbuster, they knew that Blockbuster made 50% of the revenues on late fees, and they said, we're going to go after that and have no late fees. There was no way for Blockbuster to respond to 50% of the revenue being a threat. So that's kind of pretty important as we go through it. So to kind of round it out to what you were asking about, we believe that in order to go digital, firstly, every company is going to go digital. If you don't figure out a way to go digital, chances are it's going to be very unlikely that your company will not be impacted in some way or form with the tech disruption that's going on. And two, as you're doing that, it's not just about the shim of an app. You'll have to go out and change your entire organization, company, culture, or business model. operating model. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that you're thinking deeply about how each one of those things will need to change over time in a way that's very thoughtful to meaningfully disrupt the market.
Absolutely. One of my favorite
So, and really relate to that, that's very interesting to me, is that you guys practiced what you preached. About last week or so, you guys changed your platform pricing, right? You're doing user base. People are like, well, I don't know how many registered users are working or not using it. And you guys moved to, I mean, you're basically helping people shift their business models to active users, API calls, storage use, bandwidth. I mean, that's an example of putting that into action, right? Especially when customers are actually, like partners are actually, and developers are actually, building new business models on top of your platform. You guys were actually giving them the ability to transform how they actually charge or build products on top of that. So, and that's been interesting. So tell us more about that platform pricing, consistency, how you guys got there. Why was that interesting? Like, how did you guys know that was what people were trying to get to in terms of shifting their business models and even disrupting yourself?
Yeah, I think the way that we think about this is, it's not that complicated, actually. The way you think about it is, are you in complete alignment with your customer's objectives? Or is there a conflict of interest between you and your customer? And the more you can be in full alignment with your customer, you'll actually create business models that sustain and thrive. And if you actually go out and do things where the customer fails but you succeed, those don't tend to be sustainable kind of outcomes, right? So customers buy us. Why do customers buy Box? Customers buy Box because they want to make sure that their users can get more productive with a cloud content management solution. They also make sure that their businesses and business processes can get more automated, and they want to make sure that their customers, suppliers, and partners can have better experiences with their technologies as a result of the use of Box, right? So those are the reasons they buy us. Now, if we were to go to a customer, what we found was, as you go into the third area, which is, one of the things we did about a year and a half, 2 years ago, was we said, people love using Box. Why don't we make sure that Box is available not just through our first-party app and through integrations that we have with other partners like Salesforce, but also through any app that a customer builds themselves. So if I'm a wealth management company, like a financial services or wealth management company, and I want to be a custodian of estate planning or will documents, wouldn't it be nice if the way in which people experience that content is in a similar way and similar kind of level of user delight as people who are using Box can do it? So what we did was we took our entire stack of technology and made it available as a set of platform services. So just like you use Twilio for notifications, you use Box for content. Now, the pricing model, the way that was kind of really interesting and how that came about is, we had customers that started coming to us saying, I've got millions of customers. I've got 14 million or 18 million customers or users that I want to go out and make your technology available to. So give me a pricing model that makes sense for them. And what we wanted to do was take out the friction on how those customers could enable their customers. So we said, one way to do it is to, okay, you've got 14 million users. We'll give you a very low, highly discounted price for 14 million users. And while that was great, 14 million times anything is a pretty large number, right? And so it just became prohibitive for the customer. So what we said, instead of doing that, wouldn't it be nice if we said, when does a customer actually derive value from us? Not when you deploy it to the user, but it's when the user starts using it. So we said, we're going to change our pricing model so that we do it in such a way that you should be paying for what the active use is and the resources you're consuming, rather than just because you deployed it to someone. So we completely pivoted our pricing model from a provisioned user to an active user pricing model. And what that did was got us even more in alignment with the customer. And I think this is something that I would say my biggest learning I've had in software is extremely smart people make insanely logical decisions for exactly the right reasons that end up killing companies, right? and so what you have to do is you have to go out and say, not just from your business, is this right for the customer? Is the pricing model right for the customer? And if it's right for the customer, then you will build a sustainable business. We didn't feel like it was right for the customer to just go out and charge them on provisioned users when there were people that were coming to us with millions of users. We said, let's charge you on active use. And as you succeed and as more people use the product, you're going to get more value from it. You're going to be okay with paying us. And that's exactly what started happening.
Very smart. Very smart. One of my favorite tweets from Aaron is the following: adding software to a broken process doesn't make you digital. The biggest challenge is reimagining the process, not writing software. And as I think about reimagining customer engagement and improving the customer experience and shifting from a defensive to an offensive mindset where you're proactive, and as Ray says, you use contextual intelligence for mass personalization at scale, I think of this movement towards artificial intelligence as an enabler for you to really reimagine the process. What are your thoughts in terms of AI and the user experience as we look forward?
Yeah, so if you think about AI, and we talk about, we are kind of pretty entrenched in this right now. So if you think about AI, one of the things that we think of, the top level tenet that we focus on is a piece of content should disproportionately compound in value when it's put in box versus someplace else, right? Yeah. And so the value of that one same piece of content is much higher for the user and for the company when it's in box versus it's in some other kind of repository or some other kind of content management system. Mm-hmm. One way to do that is by making sure that you don't compete with the innovation velocity of technology, but actually use that as a tailwind. So I'll give you an example of how this really kind of makes sense. Sure. What you see with AI and machine learning specifically is that the algorithms for machine learning are actually quite commoditized and pretty broadly available. What's differentiating is not the algorithm, but the training data sets, right? Yep. Now, we happen to be extremely fortunate in the sense that we have a very large training data set because we've got 71,000 customers, and our content is growing at a rate that's twice the rate of the acquisition of customers or revenue, right? So we're actually seeing a very, very steep curve on the content growth. And so when you start seeing that, you say, okay, so how do we go out and compound the value of content within Box compared to some other place? Well, one thing you can do is say, we've got a data set. Let's make sure that we tie into as many external systems as possible so that they can add value to our data set. So, for example, I might be a healthcare company and I have, radiology images, MRIs, and CAT scans and X-ray documents that I have in my system because we are a HIPAA-compliant repository that holds 120 different file formats, and we've got that as a capability. Wouldn't it be nice if we also made available the capability that someone else could take and apply their logic to that content in a secure way on behalf of our customer, as long as our customer is okay with it? Well, it might just happen to be that for that particular use case, a particular algorithm like Watson, from IBM, might be a really good algorithm to go out and detect cancer within a breast image. However, if I go out to a travel agency and they've got pictures of different cities, Google's Vision API might be a better way to go out and detect, what city this picture is from. And Watson might not be as good as Google Vision API. And if you go to contracts, Microsoft might be much better at going out and detecting contracts. Because we are a neutral third party that actually believes in an open ecosystem, we can actually tie in all those three ML engines with our training data set and really compound the value for the customer, because they don't have to worry about going out and tying to any of those. We'll just make the connective tissue over there from us. And so the way that we think machine learning will really get kind of add step function value is you'll be able to start doing things with content that you never really imagined before. Initially, you'll try to say, okay, let me just replace a human task. But then eventually, you might be able to do things that humans could not do before that you can do actually with these algorithms coming together. And that actually is when you can really compound the value. And that's what we're trying to do. So in the next 10 years, what you'll start to see is when you have content in Box versus anywhere else, like it'll be like it's a meaningful step function improvement. And this is a 10-year problem. This is not a 1 or 2 year problem. We're thinking about this from a very long-term perspective, but we'll continue to start having solutions that you'll start to see come out over the course of the next few years.
Jeetu, that's a lightning round. That's a killer vision. I love it. I really do.
Jeetu, lightning round. So, all right. So for 2020, right? AR, VR, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up. I think for what AR VR will do is what iPads did for the knowledge worker, that's going to do for some of the field workers. So I think it's going to be a very, very different kind of immersive experience. And I think voice will be just as significant over there as well. So AR, VR, and voice will be the different interfaces as you move forward.
AI as the new UX, up or down?
So I think AI and ML specifically will be based in the fabric of what you do. I don't think about ML as a UX. I think of ML as the experience that the users will actually derive from different sites of, and we have an advantage over there because of our training data sets. So that's all we talked about earlier.
Well, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about in general in the marketplace, not about your product. Vision, right? Like vision, sense, speech, right?
Like natural language processing, where
Yes.
you're engaging with enterprise apps through voice.
I think you will see much more conversational interfaces because of ML and natural language than what you'll see otherwise across every category of software.
Yeah, totally agree.
Got it. IoT, thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you think by 2020?
So, streaming data and making sure that you've got data and everything. The reason GE has $7 to $8 billion in software revenue is because of IoT, because they've got sensors in every single one of the hardware pieces that they have. So it's I wish you give me something that I can put a thumbs down to, but AR, VR, IoT, and ML. All
no problem. No problem. Enterprise content management in the cloud. Thumbs up. Thumbs down. All right. We've got Jeetu Patel, Senior Vice President of Platform and Chief Strategy Officer at Box. Twitter, you can follow him at jpatel41. We'll figure out what the 41 is about later.
Please come back. You were awesome. You were very terrific.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeetu.
Okay.
That was terrific. Yeah, Ray, you talk about some of the hottest emerging technology. Thumb down would have been pretty tough.
All right, I'm trying to simplify it. I'm trying to get we try these lightning rounds all the time. It's hard.
Speaking of a guy who has no problem giving thumbs down, if it makes sense.
Nice hat.
Oh, nice hat. Oh, Ray, we got to get DisrupTV hats. What's going on here? I'm being a bad marketeer for our show.
We'll get hats made.
We're doing a promo.
Yeah, that was a really interesting a few months ago, but we'll go there later.
I get paid for doing these things,
We are.
He's a walking billboard. He's a walking sponsored billboard.
Yeah, he doesn't like me when I do intros of him to the show, but I'm doing it anyway. We now have our cleanup hitter, guy who's going to come in and hit a grand slam with his insights, Esteban Kolsky, principal and founder of ThinkJar. ThinkJar, a customer strategy consulting firm, a think tank organization helping companies and users successfully become better, more open, more collaborative, ultimately growing revenue and delighting customers. He's a customer strategist. We'll call him Esteban. Esteban's a customer strategist, researcher, keynote speaker, and a consultant with over 15 years of consulting experience. 8 of it was with Gartner. He doesn't like talking about that. He's also a first ballot Hall of Fame to DisrupTV, and you can follow Esteban on Twitter at eKolsky, EKOLSKY, and you can also read his super smart blogs at EstebanKolsky.com. Welcome, Esteban, to DisrupTV.
I'm crying. Right after my mom, you're the best person I know.
All right. So hey, we're going to do a rundown. This was a very interesting week. We are in the middle of conference season. We're seeing tons of different announcements. Everyone's got an AI product. Everyone's got X, Y, and Z. But we're also seeing the rise and fall of some of the early of technology winners in 2010. So tell me about the Requiem on Jive that it kind of looked like when you put out the other day. What's going on?
We're going to start simple, huh? We're going to start easy then.
We're going to start simple, not controversial. Let's just go hard.
For the complete disclaimer, you should see my blog, but I have history with Jive. I started working with them about 10 years ago, so maybe a little less. I know them for longer. I know Dave Hirsch from the beginning and so forth, but I love the product, I have to say. I mean, until version 6 came along, it was pretty crappy on-premises product. Version 6 did a good job putting it on the cloud, and they've done a really good job since then. Their chief product guy, Ofer Ben David, really smart guy, incredibly intelligent, and yet the company sucked. really bad. 9 quarters of continuous decline. 1 quarter where they actually made 1.75% profit margin on their revenues because they laid off 15% of the workforce. That was the only way to make money. So this doesn't talk to a product problem. It talks to a management problem. The management has been horrible, and I'm being nice to them for the last 2-3 years. They should have left a long time ago. They came with a purpose to sell the company. They weren't able to do that, and finally somebody felt sorry enough to give them a fire sale, lowest as you can get price for the company. Doesn't even cover the money. Nobody's making money on this. Yes, the company is public, but there's a lot of people that came in since the company went public that are not going to make any money on their options. Most of the investors that had any money left in it couldn't sell it. Blah 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 blah.
What's the lesson learned? What's the lesson learned, especially for customers and for people that are working in the valley? When you encounter a situation like this, right? Companies come and go, they rise, they fall. Not a lot of companies make it to the 100 million mark. Not a lot of companies make it to the billion mark. Not a lot of companies make it to the 10 billion mark, right? There's something special, right? When you get to that point, but every so often, you're going to encounter.
The valuation doesn't mean anything. There's 2 things that matter, right? There's the product and there's management. The product is good, but if management sucks, the product is not going anywhere. I mean, you can take a good product and make it stick because management makes wrong decisions. Jive decided to make the stupid decision of splitting the product into 3 products that didn't go anywhere, building mobile apps that didn't add any value. Customers were complaining about things that were never resolved. They were 2, 3, 4 years going, and they had never been resolved. There were a lot of problems, in the way they were doing things, and management was not paying attention. The management they brought was inexperienced. They didn't know anything. The lessons learned here, really simple. If you have a good product, get out of the way. Let the product shine on its own. Let the market decide what the product should do and listen to the market. The lesson for investors, and the investors knew this because Jive went through 2 or 3 sessions where they were going to be acquired, and during due diligence they decided not to, mostly because of management. So if you're an investor, make sure that your management team actually is aligned with what you want to do. Go ahead.
Now, here's the interesting thing. What happens if the management is great and the product sucks?
That's actually good because you can take the management and put him in another company in your portfolio.
You sound like a PE firm runner.
You can't save a bad product, But actually, the interesting thing in what he said is, and we talked about this before, if the product is bad, the product will never make it to market to the point that good management will just hang around for a while. I mean, it's really simple. Management and product had to work together to make it successful.
The best product doesn't win in the valley. It's the best marketing.
I agree with you. But marketing only takes you so far. Look at me. This is my career.
I'm going to shift topics to your recent blog. You pointed to a MIT review blog on differences between AI and machine learning. And in the blog, you said you advised people to read it carefully, and you talked about, the blog talked about as technology advances, you might soon cross a threshold where AI requires a leap of faith. And ultimately, there were individuals using deep learning, machine learning, and they didn't quite understand certain outcomes. One of the examples was Mount Sinai in New York, applying deep learning to 700,000 patient record information. And they called the project Deep Patient. And then at some point, Deep Patient was able to detect diseases very accurately. And yet the doctors didn't quite know how the algorithm was achieving this accurate success rate. So what advice do you have? What's the learning from this whereby, companies talk about transparency and trust, and yet they're looking at technologies advancing at such rate where the people that are responsible for the outcomes can't quite describe how they got from A to B.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I mean, first, that article is excellent because it brings back to the forefront things about machine learning that most people don't understand or they never really thought, right? I mean, you got to differentiate between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, anybody can do it. This is what 99.99% of the companies are using what we call AI for. It's just take the data, find patterns, find the repetition of the patterns, and then automate the hell out of that, right? But machine learning is different. Machine learning is when you tell the machines, I have no idea what to make with this. You figure it out. Here's the parameters that you had to go through, and you figure out what to do with it, right? And it is a little scary, because when you say you figure it out, you're saying, it's like, when I tell my kids, why don't you figure out how to do something? And they figure out something that is completely the opposite of what I was thinking they would end up doing, because they think, right? Yeah. They don't have all the constraints, they don't have all the biases, they don't have all the parameters, they don't have the variables. They have what they have.
They don't care. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. And machines care even less. So when we look at, science fiction treatment of artificial intelligence, we're talking about, like, rogue machines that started as machine learning. Deep learning is a great marketing term, but it's still the same thing, right? But, we look at rogue machines that started as machine learning and basically got, awareness. And actually on Monday, I'm publishing a link to another article that talks about awareness, because I want to talk about this. If you're going to talk about artificial intelligence, let's talk about the stuff that matters. Let's talk about how our neural network can actually expand itself and become, conscious of its problem. But then let's talk about how we constrain those problems. The only way that we're going to get to singularity, the only way we're going to get to, like, a problem like machines taking over, is because there's going to be one stupid human being in the world, and there's always one, that is going to say, I don't care what the outcome is, just go ahead and run with it and see where you go with it. We haven't done that, and we likely won't never do that. But, we're going to have this discussion so we actually prevent that from happening.
So the distinction that was made, a very simple one but often missed, is that instead of programmers writing commands and solving problems, you're now delegating program generating its own algorithm based on example data, and the outputs sometimes can be contradictory or nearly impossible to understand.
They usually are impossible to understand, because if you look at how neural networks work, right? It's basically the same way that you actually infer or deduce anything. They start with one known item, and then they start going into all the branches and ramifications of that until they get to the outcome that you're looking for, right? And then all the many outcomes, essentially. But the path that it takes to the neural network is the same. If I were to ask you, why don't you tell me what 3 memories you actually used to recall this thing that you did yesterday? You'd be like, well, I don't know. I mean, I remember this, and then, but this was based on that, and that was based on that, and that was based on that, and then this and this and that, and then there's 6 million things that you don't know, and that's how the way machines work. Machines build their deductions based on, like, what the neural network did, not in the same way that you and I think about it. It's not a logical way to get to the outcome, and this is why, these doctors were surprised at what deep patient found, is because, well, logically it doesn't make sense. Yeah, but it's not a logical deduction. It's a machine deduction. It's very different.
Yeah, those psychiatric diseases were, completely shocking results to the doctor. But anyway, so it's a fascinating article, and thanks for sharing it with us.
Oh, the one on Monday is a lot better.
Hey, no, it was a great article, and what was really scary for me is, like, I hadn't watched The Matrix in like 10 years, and I was watching The Matrix, and I get to the bottom, and I realized, holy crap, this whole story was about AI, ML. And when you think about it, like, the only reason Keanu Reeves succeeds is because humans can read between the rules. Right? The machines follow the rules that were created, but humans can actually move between the rules and around the rules, and that's the one thing AI can't do. Right?
I watched the Matrix trilogy over the weekend because, hell, I don't sleep anyway, so what's the point? And that's exactly what I was starting to look at it from that perspective of, like, machine learning and all that. The fact that,
yes.
Yes, and there's all this, like, there's the agents, right? Like, Hugo Smith and whatever. They're actually programs created for the specific purpose of disrupting the neural network. That would be fascinating to take on as well, right? Not only from the research perspective, which I know it's done, but, like, how can a company create an agent that will go and disrupt some opposing companies' neural networks, like the conclusions are wrong? That's the fun part, man. Let's get to that. Let's forget this, like, whole predictive and prescriptive crap that anybody can do in their sleep.
Okay, so we've talked about the rise and fall of companies, products versus good marketing. We're talking AI, ML. Let's go flashback, right? Back to the CIO and CMO convergence. We talked about this and the rise of the chief digital officer. Are chief digital officers dead? Are they real? What's going on? Not, we're accepting chief digital evangelists, but chief digital officers, what happens, right? What's going on?
Well, so you and I did a great thing in Italy, was it, right? Yeah, in Italy. I think it was in 2013. We did this great show where we actually pretended to be a CIO and a CMO and had the emergence of the CDO.
We did a skit on Skit Live. We changed what we were going to do on the plane on the way to Milan. So
that's awesome.
And
By the
then
way, I spoke to about 10 CDOs in the last 2 weeks, so they're definitely there. Just to put it out.
so are blacksmiths, and they're like, we also think that we still have a few truck drivers available. Come on, dude.
Most popular job in 47 states, truck driver. Just let you know.
What's the purpose of the CDO? To manage digital assets. What are digital assets? Data. What is data? Everything. Anybody in the company should be a CDO. Why would you put somebody? Even the people, more than half the people that actually became CDOs in the last 5 years, they already abandoned that and they moved to some other title because there's no purpose to it.
You say that, but last week your former company, Gartner, released a study that said only 40% of businesses have started their digital transformation. So 60% are still using legacy products, legacy solutions, and are ripe for disruption. So, there's
100% of them will continue to use legacy products and services. Okay, there's no way. Those
oh my God, how'd you get to that step, man? That's brilliant.
those COBOL programs that I wrote in 1980s, 1990s, they're still around and running most of the business.
Okay? Oh, COBOL programmers are making big money right now, no question.
They're making $400 to $600 an hour just to maintain old stuff that is still running every company.
Forget Angular. Tell your kids to learn COBOL.
Visual COBOL, dude. Come on. Microsoft Visual COBOL.
I don't see it on your Twitter bio, though. I don't see COBOL on your Twitter bio.
Listen, are you kidding me? It was the third or fourth program that I learned.
Okay.
Hey, we have a stat that by 2025 there will be no chief digital officers, but more digitally enabled CXOs. So we get this, but the chief digital officer concept, it is hot. It is still hot. It's got legs, right?
And so was the chief customer officer for a while. Then we've seen the decline of those and the emergence of the CMO as a strategies. So was what's the new one that everybody's pushing at the chief artificial intelligence officer? We run out of 3 letters. We go to 4 now. I mean,
no, isn't that a robot?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You say that Jack Ma just said that by 2030, Time Magazine CEO of the Year will be a machine.
What do you think? I don't know Jack personally. I cannot say whether he's smart or not. Okay.
He's smart.
I know Bill Gates personally, and from a long time ago, and I tell you, he's a really smart guy, and he really gets it. And I never saw Bill Gates say, "Hey, we need a chief digital officer for Microsoft."
Okay, listen. There are some
cool stories about Jack. So how he stole all once the Yahoo deal kind of failed, he just replicated it on his own. But that's a whole other story. So.
One topic that I'm interested in is you're going to do your 6-year research, your customer service survey.
Yeah.
And you're talking about adoption and trends in customer service. And in a blog, you created the stack, top at the SaaS layer at the top and bottom, and customer service had 4 pillars. You had sales, you had marketing, and you talked about as you're entering the cloud-based era, microservices, algorithms, all of these technologies and capabilities. Tell us about your survey. What are you looking to validate, if anything, and what's the point of view for your survey?
The underlying theory, which hasn't changed much over the last 6 years, is that customer service is not, number one, not quick to adopt technologies, and number two, when they adopt them at the top of the hype level, and they run them down all the way to becoming almost unusable, right? So if you think about pick your favorite technology, email, chatbots is a new one now, right? AI, we're going to adopt them when it's at the peak of the hype, and then we're going to figure out that they're not really as advanced as we thought, and then we're slowly going to stop using them, and then eventually we'll figure out what to do. Chatbots that everybody's talking about now, we adopted them first 20 years ago. We grew to about 20% market adoption. Then it went down to 1-2%, and now it's around 17-20% again. So we see a lot of value in this stuff. There's a lot of stuff in customer service, but the bottom line, what I'm trying to find out is how many customers are actually moving in the direction of a cloud-based, platform-based customer service.
How do you take the survey? How do you take the survey?
How do I do the survey?
Well, how do you take the survey? Do you go to estebankolsky.com and there's a link there?
Oh yeah, if you go to my blog, you should find it. It's really easy. I'm tweeting like crazy these days until I get enough answers. So on my Twitter feed, you'll find it.
All right. Hey, I'm going to write about it.
Hey, we've got some.
Are you willing to
We've got
share?
some offshore farm that's going to send you some survey responses. So
So here's a good part for you, Vala. Here's a good part because my sponsor for this year is Salesforce.com, and you work for a company called Salesforce.com. You get access to the results before anybody else. If you want to write something about it, I'll send you the data before we have a webinar scheduled.
wait, no, he's not eligible to participate in the survey. Isn't that where you existing family members, companies, affiliates, and partners cannot apply?
No. I wrote on your customer experience survey. It was one of my most popular Huffington Post blogs. So I definitely want the research as soon as possible. Thank you.
We have a webinar scheduled on July 6th to share the results, but I'll give them to you before so you can write a nice article plugging in the webinar.
Awesome.
All right. Esteban Kolsky, principal and founder of ThinkJar at Kolsky. We've had a very, very exciting thing. Last question, man. What's going on with startups in Silicon Valley? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Depends what you call a startup, but for microservices, companies that are actually creating microservices to run on platforms, thumbs up. Anybody else?
And there you have it, the summary.
All right.
Live on DisrupTV. All right. Hey, thanks a lot for being on the show, Esteban.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. I can't think of a better way of ending episode 60 than having one of the smartest guys. I know, he's so loose and, he's so fun that, if you're first time watching, you may not realize he's one of the brightest minds in enterprise software. So
we're waiting for the hate mail from some software company that
just all the startup services. Just think about all the VCs and startup founders we've had, Ray, who are not in the microservices business on the show. They're going to love this segment.
Episode 61, 11 a.m. PT to 2 p.m. Eastern. Who do we have next week?
We got an amazing show. We've got Diana O'Brien, CMO of Deloitte. So, small company you may have heard of. So Diana will join us, talk about all of the marketing trends and research from Deloitte. We have Jonathan David Lewis, McKee Wallwork and Company, author of Brand versus Wild, Building Resilient Brands for Harsh Business Environments. And then we have John Short, San Francisco bureau chief at USA Today. So we've got a digital marketing theme, and we're bringing a media editor to help validate some of the trends that we'll be talking about in terms of digital businesses. So it's going to be an awesome show.
Very, very cool. So, hey, please stay tuned. Please follow us on Twitter. If you follow us our podcast, and follow us, of course, the DisrupTV hashtag for more. If you've got a speaker that you want to bring on board, CEO, founder, sigil, CXO, doing some innovative stuff, please definitely let us know. We're definitely always looking for great folks, book authors, leaders, thought leaders, everyone else. And if you're an influencer who think you should be on DisrupTV show, let us know, tweet to us. So take care, everyone.
If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. See you, everyone.